Hey, it's Saul Overman. We're doing our second video. We're titling Best Airgun Value for Under $100. This is a review of the Ruger Impact. As we covered in the first part, the Impact is essentially a Ruger Yukon without the nitro piston, with just a plain metal spring. This video, we're going to do Chronograph results. We just finished 40 shots with 10 shots each of 4 different pellets with our Pro Chrono. Pro Chrono worked fine. This was the first use of this unit. I didn't even use the sky screens on it. It worked perfectly, didn't get one error. And then we're going to go into the shooting impressions of the Ruger. Now, I've fired it probably about 200 times, so got some idea of kind of what's going on with it. Let's first move on to the Chronograph results. Ruger Super Points. These are actually on the box said Ruger Impact. It doesn't say it on the tin. These are Umarex. I'm presuming that these are marketed with this rifle and they're meant to be compatible. So 16.9 grain pointed pellet. 11 shots on this one. I went one over my 10. Highest velocity was 674, low velocity was 625 for a 645 average, so it's pretty hot. Extreme spread of 49 and a standard deviation of 16, and that was the worst standard deviation that we got of any of the 4 pellets we tried. Number 2 was the Excite Plinking. Lightest pellet at 7.4 grains. High velocity on that was 753, low 740, standard deviation of 3, which I thought that was pretty good. 748 average and extreme spread of 13. And these look like they're going to turn out to be a pretty accurate pellet too, but we'll get into that more later. Alright, number 3 was the Beeman Round Top. These were heavy pellet. It's 16.2 grains, right up there with the Ruger Super Points, but seemed a lot more repeatable. High velocity of 699, which is quite a bit higher than the Rugers, for just a tiny bit less weight. Low was 679, average is 687, standard deviation was 5, and an extreme spread of 20 feet per second. So I thought that was pretty good on those. And the fourth and final are the Gamma Match Diablos at 15.43 grains. These came in with a high of 717, low of 706, average 711, extreme spread of 11, and a standard deviation of 3. That's pretty. 3 is a pretty good number, and we got that with two different pellets, so I am pretty happy with that. Okay, let's move on to just kind of some shooting impressions here. I want to stand up, kind of show you what I've learned. One thing, the cocking effort on this is very high. I suspected it would be, and I mentioned in the part 1 video that may be why there's a supply of these refurbished. For those who didn't see the first video, this is a refurb that came for $80 from Airgun Depot. And they seem to have a steady supply of them and have had for a while. So my theory was that they are probably getting bought at Walmart and then returned because of just too big and heavy of a gun, and the cocking effort was very high. And the cocking effort is very high. 40 shots of it, doing a 40 shot string like I just did, will pretty much wear you out. I started off yesterday cocking it with my left hand. After about 50 rounds of that, I could no longer even hardly hold my left arm up. If you bear down on your leg when you're cocking it, it's going to leave a bruise on your leg and eventually get sore. It's pretty high cocking effort. The recoil is pretty significant as well. A very jarring recoil. It seems to want a particular hold, and I'm not going to do the accuracy testing till I really am confident that I can do the gun service. It seems to want a particular hold, which is not really easy to find. The stock we commented on in the first video how pretty it is, nice checkering, nice piece of wood. This from here back, it is not designed right at all. It's too short, it's too thin through here, and too thin in width. And this is not any softer than wood, this piece of plastic right here. So it's really a pain producing stock, especially from the bench. If you hold it too tight and you let this bump your clavicle, it stings a little bit. It's a very jarring recoil, buzzy, jarring recoil. The trigger, actually, it's pretty good. We've got a trigger gauge coming. My last video I do will include that trigger pull weight. I'm going to guess it's about 5, just roughly. But it's smooth and controllable, stackable. It's not bad. I really had no really major complaint about the trigger. When I first got it, right after I did the first video, I went ahead and cleaned it well and got just tons of black soot out of the barrel. But this was before I'd ever found it, so I suspected it had been dieseling, and it definitely had been fired. And then once I started shooting it, it was dieseling heavy. Apparently there's a lot of oil in the pressure chamber, and really in retrospect I almost wish I would have disassembled it and gone ahead and cleaned out the pressure chamber a little bit and get some of that oil out of there, because it continued to diesel pretty bad for about 75 or 100 rounds. I didn't notice any at all this morning, so I think I finally might have got it cleaned out yesterday. So of course, you know, with the dieseling, the accuracy was just all over the place. It was just grouping like a shotgun, especially initially. You could tell over time it was starting to settle down more and more. And that may be another reason why these are coming back to Walmart in high numbers, or wherever in high numbers, is because they're packing them with a bunch of oil, and they're dieseling really badly, and nobody can get any decent accuracy, and they don't have the patience to sit there and, you know, clean it for one thing, or take it apart and clean it, or just sit there and shoot it until they finally burn out all that oil. What else? I did find one thing. These two screws here, there's one there, and opposite side, one there. Those are hold the action into the stock, and they work loose. They seem to shoot loose. After about 10 or 20 rounds, they will have backed out a complete turn. So those are going to have to be Loctited in, and they do, when you tighten them, it changes the point of impact a lot. Like if they're very loose and then you tighten them down, you've changed the point of impact in the direction up by about 4 inches at 60 feet. And that's what shooting I've been doing, is at 60 feet. The scope, I really haven't got any kind of major complaints on it. Nothing really stands out about it. It's marked with a little Ruger Phoenix on it here. It is in no way in any relationship to the crosshairs. You think, you know, you try to put the mark basically at the top of the crosshair so you can use that kind of a rough index when you're trying to straighten up the hairs, but it's way off. It's kind of off on the side. One of the scope caps already has a crack in it. They're real chintzy, but it's a cheap scope, and a better scope, you know, would be a good addition to this gun. So we're still holding out that it is probably the best value for under $100, even with you know, the little flaws we've noticed. My biggest complaint really so far of everything on it has been this. It looks good, and I just didn't really appreciate how bad it was going to be until it started thumping me, you know, 100 times. It's just hard to get what it wants out of the scope. I mean, out of the stock. It's just all wrong. It looks nice, but it's not. Wasn't designed by a shooter, at least not of my proportions anyway. You know, and one thing we did learn is that somebody that's a kid, or somebody of small stature, or a woman, somebody that doesn't have a lot of upper body strength, is probably not going to be able to use this rifle at all. I mean, I don't think you just couldn't cock it. Not safely anyway. So that's it. I'm going to cut this short. I don't want to make these run too long, and we'll get back to you here with our next video, which is going to be our accuracy results. And thanks for watching. This is Saul saying have a great day.